Front and center, Fox 5 LA. You allowed Gypsy Rose Blanchard on your platform to lie today. Are you guys aware that Gypsy Rose Blanchard used a man with autism, a low IQ, mental health issues that was collecting a disability check and manipulated him for 3 years and had him believing that she really was being abused, which she wasn't, which I will prove in this video. But let's go ahead and watch your interview.
So everyone has a story, but our next guest has one that is both horrifying and heartbreaking. Gypsy Rose Blanchard went to prison after pleading guilty to second-degree murder, the murder of her mother. And throughout her childhood and beyond, Gypsy's mother would tell people her daughter suffered from a string of illnesses and disorders, going so far as to do things that included making her use a wheelchair, a feeding tube, get multiple unnecessary surgeries, and take medication she didn't need. Years of physical, mental, and medical abuse led to Gypsy convincing a man she met online to kill her mother. She served 7 years of her 10-year sentence. She was released last December. Gypsy tells her story. She adds details that have never been heard before in her new memoir, My Time to Stand. And Gypsy joins us this morning. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You are pregnant, by the way, so congratulations on your pregnancy.
Thank you.
You're having a little girl, you said?
I'm having a girl, yes.
Do you have a name yet?
We haven't picked out a name yet, but we have a lot of options.
It's interesting, right, when you are in the process of becoming a parent, how you will find how that will change you as a person. And going through the experience you've gone through, how do you think you're prepared to step into that role?
Well, thankfully, I have a wonderful support system. I have a wonderful family and friends who support me through this journey. So I have lots of feedback from them and just a lot of support from them. So that helps me a lot.
And your story has been well documented, and a lot of people have been following your journey and everything that happened. But what do you want people to know and take away from this memoir?
I really just want them to read this memoir and realize that it doesn't matter what you have been through in your life. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that good things still can happen for you, regardless of the horrors that you may have experienced in your life, because I think everyone relates to trauma in some form or fashion.
Well, for about 23 years of your life or so, it was basically, you could describe it as a nightmare, right?
Right.
How were you able to move on or move forward? Do you think about the past? Did you think about your mother?
I mean, of course. I'm in extensive therapy, and I work through my past by going through that therapy. And it's going to be a long journey. It's nothing that I will be able to get over in one day. So it's going to be a lifelong healing process for me.
You say you want to be an influence for change. Can you talk about that? What do you mean by that? And did that experience in prison highlight the fact that you want to be an influence for change?
Absolutely. I feel like there is a lot of positive change that could happen if given the ability. And so I think that there is a lot of things in our justice system that needs to be addressed. So I am an advocate for prison reform, but also for abuse victims. I feel like I was in a situation where I didn't know that there were resources to help children and victims of abuse in my situation. And so I think that needs to be advocated more, those resources, and more knowledge and education about that.
Yeah, talk about that, because you say in and out of prison, your platform you're using right now to really spread the message that there needs to be change and there is hope, as you were mentioning. But talk about your time in prison and the learning aspect you went through in terms of finding what resources were available and learning a lot for yourself about what lies ahead.
Of course, I mean, there are resources that are within the prison system, but getting those resources are actually quite difficult. And so I think that there needs to be very, very specific things that are laid out, because it is very difficult for incarcerated individuals to get the extensive mental health therapy that they would require. So there needs to be more advocacy on that.
You talked about something that you hadn't mentioned until recently, how you were actually addicted to painkillers, right? That was something that many people didn't know. I was wondering, at the time that the murder of your mother happened, were you under the influence of the painkillers? Were you high? Did that influence what occurred that night?
I was during that week abusing painkillers. However, that was not something that affected my mental state at that time.
Interesting. It's fascinating to me that for so many years, you went along with this fabricated story, right? And I guess I have a hard time understanding how when you would go visit doctors, because you did extensively, how those doctors were unable to see the truth, that you actually could walk, that you didn't need a feeding tube, that you didn't need these drugs you were given. I mean, it's just baffling to me. How was someone out there not saying, wait a minute, she doesn't need any of this stuff. This is all a lie.
I know. The level of deception that my mother had over these doctors was so extensive and so severe that these doctors would ignore test results coming back normal and things like this, things that should have been red flags. And unfortunately, I was one of the individuals of many that fall through the cracks.
So do you find those doctors in any way responsible for carrying on and allowing your mother then in a way to carry on this lie?
You know, I kind of chalk that up to human error. I think we all want to believe the good in people. So, you know, I struggle with that. It is something that, yes, I do feel like they should be held accountable in ways. And other ways, I also feel like it was misjudgment on their part.
What do you think? Do you think there needs to be reform in the medical healthcare system as well? And what has helped you the most since being out of prison in terms of helping to rehabilitate your life?
Of course, I think that there should be more red tape within the medical system. I think that it should be a requirement for doctors to take a certain course while going through medical school on Munchausen by proxy syndrome. And I think that, you know, in general, there needs to be more advocacy and more awareness about Munchausen by proxy syndrome. And yes, I have.
This is microdeletion 1q21.1. This is the poster child for that chromosome disorder. Gypsy Rose Blanchard was diagnosed with this chromosomal disorder. This is Gypsy Rose Blanchard in prison next to the poster child for this chromosomal disorder. These are all the symptoms of this chromosomal disorder, including developmentally delayed, a lack to thrive as far as poor growth, seizures, behavioral problems. It also lists muscle dystrophy, psychiatric issues, all of that, joint laxity, all of that is in here. Which these are the symptoms that her mother was so desperately trying to find out what was wrong with her. She was diagnosed in 2009 or 2011, I believe. Once she was diagnosed, they stopped all surgeries because they were dealing with these problems individually. When she was diagnosed with that microdeletion disorder, the surgeries stopped. Now you may say, Anina, how do you know that she has a chromosomal disorder? Well, it is in her medical records, but her father actually admitted it. So let's watch that.
They did some tests and found out she had a chromosome disorder that was causing all of her functions from developing, her digestive system and her muscular system.
So let's talk about the symptoms, the wheelchair, the feeding tube, the surgeries. When it comes to the wheelchair, it was because of the weak muscles. It's similar to the way an infant has a stroller. When they get weak and tired, you put them in that stroller. It's the same thing. Now, I know you probably haven't watched Gypsy's lives or videos, but she oftentimes complains about pain, which is coming from that microdeletion. That's when she's standing up. She complains about that. That's why she had the wheelchair. Did her mom embellish it? Yes, for financial gain. Her mother was never diagnosed with Munchausen by proxy. The feeding tube was for the failure to thrive, which if you look up this chromosomal disorder, that is part of the symptoms. The surgeries that she had were mainly eye surgeries and surgeries on her teeth. You can look that up. And she needed the eye surgeries because part of that chromosome disorder is the lazy eye and those types of issues. You can look that up as well. And what makes this worse, Fox 5, is that you have villainized and allowed this woman to come on your platform and villainize a woman that is dead. A woman that was never diagnosed with Munchausen by proxy, and you cannot diagnose a corpse. And she herself said that her defense team told her that her mom had Munchausen by proxy. Let's watch that as well.
My two attorneys are telling me that my mother has something called Munchausen by proxy.
Not only did you allow this woman to come on your platform and villainize her mom and lie about a diagnosis that never happened, you are also perpetuating the fact that she had to do what she had to do, which is a lie. She used a man that was disabled, manipulated him for 3 years, and she's came out and manipulated you as well. And you couldn't actually go do your research. And I know you have a phone with the worldwide internet where you could have simply researched this girl and found out this information. And I know, Maria, you're a meteorologist, but come on now. You need to do better. And I sure hope you do better research with the weather than you did on this. Okay? Because if not, LA should be scared. Sandra and Maria, y'all should be extra embarrassed because a bunch of college students knew that Gypsy Rose was lying yesterday. If you watch all over TikTok, she's been the laughing stock. And y'all couldn't figure that out. But you're the journalist. That's questionable. That's concerning. Because you all are giving us information every day. And if you couldn't research this, what are you actually researching?